start off. Hey, everybody. My name is Aaron Jones. Um, I'm a first-year resident at University of New Mexico. Um, by first-year resident, I'm actually in internal medicine. I'm a physician in internal medicine. And so part of the things about becoming a doctor is you need additional training even after graduating medical school. So I'm in my post-grad year is what we call it, in my first year. And I do this for 3 years, and then I can officially be practicing medicine by myself. That being said, I'll start off by kind of giving you guys a little bit about me. So I was born and raised actually in Aurora, Colorado, small town outside of Denver. If anyone's ever been to Colorado. Basically, I ended up going to high school, kind of floating through classes, not sure what I wanted to do. And eventually I had an assistant principal there, and it was my senior year of high school. So I didn't know what I wanted to do until my senior year. Even then I was kind of skeptical. But my assistant principal offered me a chance to join a program. She said, hey, would you like to join this program? It's called Aurora Lights, which was a program to get underrepresented minorities into the healthcare field. And so through that program, I got to shadow doctors, and we just got to kind of do what you guys are doing now, talk about health careers and things like that. And from there, it kind of blossomed into me becoming a doctor. The funny thing about the whole experience is I actually thought I was going to go to school to be an engineer. My dad always said, try engineering. And then the summer of me picking my major in college, I thought, I don't know if I really want to be an engineer, so I ended up majoring in biology and going from there. This is a pretty informal conversation, so I kind of want it to be a dialogue between you guys. So you guys are free to ask questions whenever they arise. That being said, just kind of going over like the structure of medicine and my position. Do you guys know how many years after college I've gone through to be a doctor so far? Let's see what the answers are. So I got a question for somebody's guessing 4 years after high school. And I'll answer that question, Jason, after we guess how many years of school I've been in so far. I have 4. Anybody else have any guesses? 6 or 8. And after high school? Yeah, so generally, so to become a physician, a medical physician, basically you go through 4 years of undergrad. And so I did my undergrad at CU, the University of Colorado in Denver. And I did 4 years there, and I majored in biology and I minored in ethnic studies. And then after that, you go to med school for another 4 years. So, so far I've been in school for 8 years, and then I have additional 3 years of training before I'm actually practicing medicine. It kind of seems like a long road, but believe me, it goes by fast. One of the questions I got was, how hard was it to get into medical school, and how long did I study for the Mcat? So that being said, so after you graduate from college, whatever your degree is in, there's not a specific degree you have to get to go to med school. A lot of my friends, some of my friends were philosophy majors, some were religion majors, but basically you have to complete prerequisites. So certain classes to get into med school. There are a lot of bio classes, calculus, and all that. And the purpose you do those classes is so that you can take an entrance exam, which is called the Mcat. Um, so it's a pretty hard exam. At that time in my life, I feel like when you go from high school to college, you're like, man, these tests are hard. And they just gradually get harder until you become a pro at taking tests. Um, so, um, when I studied for the MCAT, I basically studied for a month and I'd study 8 to 10 hours a day. And I was able to get a good enough score to get in. Some people can study up for 4 or 5 months. There's a lot of different plans to study for the test because it's a pretty complex test. They just came out with a new test that kind of tries to pick out individuals that are well-rounded. So they added philosophy to it. Um, there's a writing portion, and then you still have to do the science portion, so biology, and then they do physics, a heavy portion of physics on there, and chemistry. So it's a pretty in-depth test that you really have to study for and prepare for. So I think that's kind of a huge hurdle of getting actually into med school. Um, Other than that, getting into med school, I'd say it was hard in general. I mean, I think people are becoming more competitive every day. And you have to kind of do a lot of stuff. So I volunteered and actually took a couple years off between med school. I was a youth programs coordinator, so um, I helped create programs for underrepresented youth to get into healthcare fields. So I was kind of paying it forward there since I joined the program. And that kind of helped pad my resume to get into med school. I got another question from Jason. Doing med school, would you say that most people were science-based majors? Um, yeah, in general, most people go the science route. It's just easier. Um, like I said, I had a couple of friends that majored in philosophy, religion. Some were music majors. There's no specific major to get into med school. Um, it's actually more unique to say that you're a different major sometimes. Um, but in general, you still have to take the same amount of classes, so it's kind of extra work if you don't major in science. Um, that being said, since you guys are in the high school kind of route transitioning into college and are hoping to go to college, just to kind of talk about that jump, I think it's a scary jump itself. As a high school student, you're kind of transitioning into adult life, believe it or not. It's kind of scary trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life. Like I said, I didn't really know what I was going to do. When I graduated, I wish I was one of the smart students that knew what they wanted to do their whole life, but I can't say that I was. When I graduated high school, I didn't really know what college I wanted to go to. I got accepted to a bunch of colleges, but I kind of had a plan to go to college with my friend, and we were going to room together. And he decided not to go to college, so I was kind of in limbo. And then my dad told me, you either go to school or work. And that's the easy answer for me. I'd rather go to school than work a full-time job. So I just went to the college that was closer to my house, and I ended up being CU. And like I said, I thought about engineering, and engineering wasn't really a great idea. It's like a lot of math, and then it's like, hey, I really liked that program that I was in that showed me healthcare positions and getting to shadow a doctor. I was like, I'll try that. And then I decided to go into medicine. Um, I think life's an interesting journey. That being said, I think my best advice for you guys in this transitioning period and going forward is just kind of saying yes to things. yes to opportunities. Um, you know, I told you about in high school, uh, my assistant principal was like, "Hey, Aaron, do you want to try this program?" I said yes, and turns out I really liked the program. Another kind of guiding factor in my choosing medicine was I applied for like a mentor position in college. It was my freshman year, and it was mentoring high school kids. And someone gave me the application. I was like, sure, I'll try it out. Um, and I ended up trying. I didn't get the job. Then all of a sudden, out of the blue, a couple months later, I got a call and someone said, "Hey, Aaron, um, we need somebody to do this mentoring position. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." Um, and then I started mentoring kids that wanted to go into healthcare fields. So it would be kind of, I don't know, I don't have the word, but it'd be kind of weird if I wasn't practicing what I preached. So that kind of pushed me a lot to go into medicine and to actually do the things to be successful in school. I have a question here about, as a first year resident, what are my hours like? Um, I'll tell you this much, residency has changed a lot, but they actually try to protect our hours a lot because we were working a lot of hours in med school. I can say one time when I was going through rotations, I worked like 120 hours in 1 week, and that was pretty insane. Um, but right now, that my residency is really good about it, and I usually when you first start residency, it's like you're a baby doctor, is what we call it. You don't really know, you don't know the system, you don't know a lot of things, so things take a longer time. And so then I was averaging about 80 hours a week. Right now, I'm more efficient at it, so I'd say about 70 hours. So I cut off 10 hours there, but and those are all morning hours, so I get to sleep a little bit. But generally, your first year of residency, you're kind of a workhorse. So you do a lot of the paperwork, getting to learn things um, and such. So you do a lot of hours your first year. And so right now I'm averaging about 70, but that's every other month. Um, Another question I have is, how much debt am I in? All right, well, we'll take a guess. Um, we'll split up the payment. So how much do you think undergrad costs? So my college, my 4 years of college, I did college in 4 years. What's your guys' guess on my
Did
4 years?
you go to private or public school?
I went to a public school. And so I have 80, 60 to 80, 20 undergrad. We have medical school at 200,000. So for undergrad, um, like I said, I wasn't like the greatest student. So unfortunately, I didn't like apply for scholarships, even though that would have been the genius idea. Everyone tells you to do it, but for some reason I didn't. So I ended up paying for college myself. And so I worked my first 2 years. And basically, since I was at a commuter campus, my tuition was about 16,000 per year um, for my first 2 years. And then I got a little bit lazy. I was like, man, this is a lot of work. Classes are getting harder. And I decided to take out loans for the last 2 years. And so I got out of undergrad with around 36,000 of debt. As far as for medical school is really expensive. Depending on your state, if you were to go to medical school in Texas, it's really cheap because they subsidize it with oil. But I actually went to a private med school. So my tuition alone for med school was around 50,000. And so that's 50,000 a year. And then we don't work during med school because basically I studied for 12 hours a day. And so you don't have time to work. So you take out living expenses also. And that turns out to be around 80,000 since I was living in Denver, which is a little bit more expensive. So it turns out to be 80,000 a year. So if you times that by 4, I come out to be around 350 plus my undergrad. It ends up with interest occurring all during this time. It's about 400,000 that I owe currently. So those are the prices of school. But I will say this, you make a lot of money in medicine once you become a practicing physician. So, and there's a lot of debt forgiveness programs that you can join. So that amount doesn't become as daunting as it seems. You know, I'm investing 400,000 to turn into, I don't know, if I practice for 30 years, it'd be probably 15 or 20 million. You know, if you calculate the numbers over the decades. So you're actually coming out above, as scary as those numbers seem. But no, this hasn't affected my credit. I think student loans affect your credit more when you don't pay your student loans. So like I took 2 years off and I still paid my student loans. But if I didn't pay my student loans, yeah, it'd start affecting my credit. I mean, when I apply for credit cards now and I tell them how much I make, it's like my debt to income ratio is very high because I'm $400,000 in debt and I only make, as a resident in New Mexico, we make about 50,000 a year. So they say, wow, how do you expect to pay that? But it happens. The next question I have is, what study tactics and strategies help me remember my concepts in biology? You know, I think the thing with learning biology and just going from high school to college is I think you learn how to learn by yourself, or it's a great time to learn by yourself. Like, what are the ways that you learn? So I don't know, either you're an auditory learner or you're a tactile learner, whatever works for you is the way you should do it. For me, I was more of like an auditory and tactile learner. So I'd have to like listen to lectures and then I'd rewrite my notes and rewrite what she was saying over and over. And that ended up working for me. Some people it works for, some people it doesn't. But for biology, I feel like the concepts can be very daunting sometimes, but I think breaking things down and understanding them at the lowest level possible will help you understand the most complex things. Even today, as a physician, those little things become huge things in general. Let me see, what other questions do we have? Was there ever a time I thought about switching my major? As far as switching my major, yeah, through college, you know, I say college is a great time to experience life. It's a great time to find out who you are as an adult. I think, you know, being by yourself is a time where you're by yourself, you're growing, your mind's changing, you're learning who you are. One of the majors I thought about switching to was philosophy. I took a philosophy class and I thought it was amazing. And so I thought about being a thinker and doing that, but then um, philosophy is very difficult to pay the bills, and so I decided that I couldn't do philosophy. But other than that, I mean, in school you can always double major. So truthfully, I majored in biology, and my minor was in ethnic studies. I only needed one more class to double major, but I didn't want to go back another semester to get the double major. But a lot of the times you can work out things to be a double major rather than switching majors if you like two things. But yeah, so what other questions do we have? Did I use study groups during college? Um, so I think part of studying, um, like I said, a part about learning in college is learning how you learn. Um, I think that I didn't really use study groups. I found it's helpful sometimes when I want to discuss topics. So if things are like really complex or I want to review something, I could use it. But if I'm just trying to learn the basics, I found it really hard to study in a group because some people know more than me, and so then they're just answering all the questions or they're doing other things. So I felt in order to do a study group, I had to be prepared and I had to know what I wanted to get from a study group. Otherwise, it didn't really work. I did use study groups to help motivate me, which goes to the procrastination question. Me and my friends would study a lot, and so whenever I'm studying, I try and study with a friend just so that we're both kind of studying, and that kind of pushes me to study more, and we kind of push each other to study during those times, um, which is really helpful. Or it could be a downside if you're a really talkative person and you guys just start chatting away, which happens sometimes, but um, kind of knowing what you needed to get done was really helpful. Um, a question about a double major. Um, would a double major be difficult? Yeah, it could be difficult if you chose um, things that are very different. I chose biology. I knew that was my major already. A double major, if I did like a biology and chemistry major, I wouldn't say that it'd be as difficult because really the amount of classes that you have to take are only a few more. So I probably would have needed 4 more chemistry classes to double major. But it's kind of what you want to do as a person. I mean, and it's what career you choose. Um, I really loved ethnic studies, like learning about different cultures and such. So I decided I would take all ethnic studies classes, and so that was something that I loved, and that's why I chose that as my minor, is just to learn more about it. But it's kind of what what you choose and where you want to go actually. Um, what rotation or aspect of medicine did I like most? So my coolest story as a medical student was during that month that I worked 120 hours a week. It was because I was on trauma surgery, which was interesting. So when people are in trauma, so accidents, or they have some type of fall or anything kind of trauma related, um, those patients are seen by the surgeon. And um, one of the times I got to scrub in for a craniotomy, which is basically this guy got in a motorcycle accident. He hit his head really hard, and his brain was bleeding inside his head. And so the thing that you have to do is your head's a closed space. So if blood is expanding, it's going to push on your brain, and your brain just can't tolerate that. So you end up needing to drill a hole in the brain to kind of let that space and that pressure go. And so I was on, it's like 1 in the morning. We're gonna I was scrubbing in, and then the neurosurgeon was like, "Hey, do you wanna do you wanna drill in?" So he let me like get the drill to drill into the skull, and he was like, "You're not gonna hurt him. It's like a safety mechanism. You just drill in and do that." And I got to drill in and just see a brain just kind of there bleeding. There's a little artery that was squirting out blood, which was the problem. And I mean, it was so cool just to see the brain and just that happening. And then he was like, he let me basically cauterize the artery. So I got to burn the artery and stop it from bleeding, which was pretty cool. Not a lot of people get to do that. So that was one of my best rotation experiences. Um, as a resident physician right now, I still am on rotations. They're primarily in internal medicine subfields. I guess I never really explained what internal medicine is, but internal medicine is basically adult. You focus on adult medicines, and basically it's the whole body and no surgery. That's as basic as I can kind of get it. It's kind of, if you've ever seen House, basically House was an internal medicine doc. So we're kind of solving questions, figuring out the basic things, and um, we specialize from there. But as a resident now, I get to go through rotations. So right now I'm on nephrology, which is the kidneys. So I'm doing the kidneys, and then next week I go on the wards. So I just do general medicine. So like basically I'm like house for a month. Um, and yeah, so right now I'd say my favorite rotation. I love being on the wards. I love like figuring out what's wrong with people. It's pretty cool. Um, so I think that's something that I plan on going into actually, is just being a general hospitalist and dealing with kind of sick people when they come in and figuring out what's wrong and treating them from there. All right, so let's look at these questions. I'll try and group them together. Um, so, all right, so there's two about medical school, so we can do that. Um, so as far as medical schools, what do they look for in students? Really, they look for a well-rounded individual. Um, I think I should start by saying there's two types of med schools that you can actually go to. Um, there's a there's an allopathic school and an osteopathic school. So allopathic medicine is your traditional. You give medicine and you wait for the patient to get better. It's your traditional medicine, and so you'll see people. Um, their abbreviation will be MD, so medical doctor, at the end of their name. And there's osteopathic physicians, which are, um, we try to say we're more holistic. We practice what we call as manipulation. So um, they have a DO at the end of their name, which is a doctor of osteopathy. So there's two, and as you can tell, I'm saying we. So I'm an osteopathic doctor, um, and basically, um, I'd say medical allopathic schools, the MD programs, they focus on a round individual, but I think they focus a lot more on grades and your MCAT score, because those are like your Harvards, they're your typical university programs. So they're more interested in kind of those things versus DO schools are more holistic. So they appreciate the community aspect, um, what you're doing outside of school. So like I was a youth programs coordinator, they really like that. Um, but in general, I think Um, Both schools look for somebody that's committed because medical school's difficult. So it's there's gonna be times where you feel like quitting. So they want to know that you're committed and that you know what to do when you're in trouble. So if you can't figure things out, they kind of want to know that you'll figure a way to make it work. Um, they also like I said, well-rounded aspects. So a lot of community service. They want to know that you want to be a doctor. So a lot of the times, if you want to go to medical school, you have to do a lot of shadowing. You have to follow a physician around and just know that this is something that you want to go into, because you do take a large debt burden on it also. So I know some people that some of my classmates went to school and they're like, this isn't for me. And they're 2 years in, and I just told you like it's 80,000 a year. So now they're $160,000 in debt. And there's not many careers that can pay that off. So they want you to know that medicine is something that you want to do. So that's why they encourage a lot of shadowing, just knowing what the physician life is like and that's what you want to do. Um, but yeah, to be competitive, I think grades always. But I think there's a lot to get into medical school because you have your MCAT, but you also interview at the schools, which is something that's different from anything else. Is you actually interview to get into school. So you go to interview and you interview at the school, and they kind of get a taste of your personality and see if you fit in. So there's a whole lot, and like I said, it's looking for like a well-rounded individual because they want you to be able to talk to people. Otherwise, how do you talk to your patients? So they really want a well-rounded person, and I think the ways you can do that is, I mean, you have education. Everyone's going to be smart, but it's what are you outside of that? It's being a person. So having things that you enjoy. So I like playing basketball. I like fishing. They really liked that I had other things besides medicine. Um, Volunteering, and like I said, I had a lot of shadowing hours. Um, did I know anyone that was a cognitive science major? Um, I'm not quite sure what cognitive sciences are. You mean by cognitive sciences? I mean, there's yeah, I'm not quite sure what you mean by cognitive sciences, but in general, I mean, basically, to get into medical school, you're basically making an application and it's a package. And they're looking at this package and they're deciding, is this what we want? So I think being a major in biology is easy because you know they want biology. But when you're something else, so say you like other things, so like my friends were philosophy, I think that changes the package. I think they're really like interested in, oh, he's a philosophy guy. Let's talk to him about philosophy. It makes you more interesting. I think medical school, getting into med school is being different from your average Joe. I think that helps you a lot, but I don't think being solely in biology is necessary. It's just easier that way. So being cognitive sciences or anything doesn't change um, anything. Uh, I mean, even as a biology major, I struggled with a lot of the classes. I mean, med school is pretty hard. Uh, like I said, I feel like you think college is hard, and then you think your MCAT's hard, and then you get to med school, and like you're basically doing a college class in 4 days, 5 days. So it's like you're going through loads of information very quickly. And so it's going to be hard no matter what. Um, so it's really, that's why it's kind of like finding a well-rounded individual helps med school, because they want to know that you're going to try and fight through the toughness. Um, do med shows inspire me? I feel like they inspired me until I got to medical school and actually started practicing medicine. Now I just comment a lot on that. That's not how I would do it. Like when I watch shows like House or I watch medical shows, I become one of those guys where they're like, oh, that's not the real way to do it. So you become a critic of the shows. So now I just don't enjoy medical shows because it's like really, and I don't know, it gets me. So unfortunately, I don't watch any medical shows. All right, so I have some questions about interviewing and AMCUS. So as far as interviewing, you get some crazy questions. Medical school question wise, I think I got like, if you were a cookie, what type of cookie would you be? Um, it's a psychological question, basically. It's how you describe yourself. So like it's a good way for people to describe themselves without personalizing themselves. So that's what the interviewer told me at the end of it. So you get weird questions like that. My med school was really relaxed. So basically, we just had a general conversation about my application. They just asked me what I like to do, um, where I see myself going, kind of the basics of interviews. So, why did you want to be in medicine? Um, if you were having trouble, what would you do? Uh, uh, and then basically, you have to come up with questions to ask them. So, a lot of the times, interviews are coming up with questions because it makes you stand out because you're asking them what are the things they like, and it just kind of becomes a conversation. Um, it says you need 15 extracurricular activities to go to medical school for application. So thankfully I did medical school. I started med school in 2013. No, that's not right. I graduated college in 2013. And I went to medical school in 2015. So things are becoming more and more competitive each year. Sometimes I think like if I had to apply to med school now, I wouldn't get in because like I don't know, the testing gets harder, people get smarter. But they didn't require me to do 15 extracurricular activities. It was just kind of what what are extracurricular activities that you like to do, and you just fill it out. There was no like requirement on how many things you needed to do. But I would have said basketball, football, fishing. I think those are the things that they look for. They just want you to have a life outside of medicine, just because one of the things that is challenging as a physician nowadays is what we call burnout. A lot of the times you're working 80 hours a week, you're not seeing your family. Um, there's a lot of craziness going on. People get burned out and they're like, why did I become a doctor? Um, and so they want you to have a life outside of medicine. So that's why they're asking for more well rounded people, is because they don't want you to be all medicine. They want you to have some fun in life. Otherwise, you're going to be burnt out in the end of things. Um, okay. How do you decide your specialty? Um, so in medical school, basically, there's medical school is divided into two portions. It's a book portion where you do 2 years in the books. So basically, you're going to classes and doing that, and then you do 2 years on rotations where you get to try out everything. So you do like you get to try out basic medicine. So like internal medicine, which is what I'm doing. You get to do surgery, psychiatry, OBGYN, which is delivering babies and gynecological things. And you also get to do pediatrics. I didn't like kids. Well, I don't like little kids. So and pediatrics is kind of out for me. As far as a OBGYN, um, I like delivering babies. It's the most amazing thing you can do to know that you're the first person to touch a baby, to touch that person's life is pretty amazing. But as far as guys in that field, as far as men in that field, it's kind of becoming scarce. So I didn't actually go into OBGYN. Um, as far as surgery goes, surgeons are I like things done this way and that way. If you've been in an operating room, it's like you're basically bossing your techs around. So like scalpel, this, that. And you have to be very direct, and that wasn't my personality. Um, so I didn't go into surgery. As far as psychiatry, psychiatry just wasn't for me. And I loved internal medicine. It gives you an opportunity to actually specialize, subspecialize. So you get to choose like a specific body part. So you can be like a cardiologist, a heart doctor, or a GI doctor, a gastroenterologist, which deals with your GI system, or you get to do the kidneys, nephrologist, or the lungs, a pulmonologist, or you can even do critical care, which is um, working in the intensive care units. But right now, I really like doing hospital medicine, which is just basic internal medicine, which is really kind of, in order to pick things out, you just got to try them. And that's what I've picked. As far as residency, do I plan on staying in New Mexico? Um, I'm not quite sure. I think New Mexico, it's a wonderful place if you guys have never been to New Mexico. Um, I think the population here is definitely different. There's a large Navajo population, which is really interesting, um, especially in medicine. Um, the Navajo people actually don't like for you to tell them a lot of things. And by that I mean to say they have something is to wish it upon them. So a lot of the times I have to rephrase things. So like if I say you have cancer, you're going to die in a few years, they would say, "Oh, you're wishing death upon me." So I have to say if someone in your condition if someone in the same position had this cancer, they would die in 3 years. So you have to very a roundabout conversations, and a lot of them actually don't. Some speak English, some don't. And when we have like family care conferences to talk about what's going on, they'll bring the whole. We'll bring like 20 people, so we'll have a whole discussion. And sometimes you have to talk to 20 different people, and they all give an opinion on what their thought is, because that's what the person wants. It's like, I want my family to tell their thoughts, and then I'll make the decision. So I think that's where ethnic studies helped a lot, is understanding cultures to answer that question. So I'm not quite sure if that's my. I mean, it's amazing to do, but New Mexico. I was born in Colorado, and I kind of love Colorado, so sometimes I think I might want to go back. So what's COVID like here? I know you guys get a lot of discussion. That's like the hot topic right now is COVID, COVID-19. Fortunately, we shut our state down pretty early. So in New Mexico, we enacted precautions pretty early when we only had like 2 or 3 cases in the state, and that helped us stop the spread. So currently, we're plateaued, to say. Um, so our ICUs are managing pretty well. We don't have too many patients on ventilator. I think right now at my hospital we have about 26 patients, which isn't bad. Um, but I think in general, not to be a pessimist, but until a vaccine comes out, I think this is our standard of living until that vaccine comes out. And they're saying that's not until next spring. So when you look kind of towards the Spanish flu models, because the Spanish flu had the same kind of mortality rate and it's had the same infectivity rate. Um, they had a peak now and then they have a peak in the winter. So that's why there's a lot of talk of, this is just the beginning, and in the winter we'll see an actual larger spike because it'll be with the flu season. So I think now we're fine, but I think the wintertime is when we'll really see how things are going around New Mexico. Um, but someone asked um, if I'm bilingual. I am not bilingual, which is difficult because New Mexico has a large Hispanic population, but our hospital offers translators. I mean, it's nice to always speak someone's language because then you understand things and you understand where they're coming from. So being bilingual is always a plus. When you look at at the general public in the United States, there's a large Hispanic population and there's a large Hispanic population that needs to be served in the actual United States. And when you look at the amount of Hispanic physicians, there's not that many Hispanic doctors out there. And so I always say, um, being African American, when I walk into another room that has an African American patient, they always open up to me a little bit different, and we actually have conversations. And I think I'm a lot more successful at treating those patients because they relate to me. Um, when my colleagues, it might not work the same. They might not. I don't know. A lot of the times I get, I get a lot of times like they have difficulties talking to people. They say they're mad at them or something, and I'm just like, that's just that's just the personality. But um, yeah, as far as going into the medical field, I warn you all, if you go into the medical field, everyone will ask you medical advice. um, my sister asks me medical advice all the time. Um, my dad does all the time. Everyone asks me, "Hey, what do you think?" Even my girlfriend's family, they ask me about things all the time. They ask me, "Hey, can you give me this medication?" So when they're like sick, they're like, "Hey, can you give me some antibiotics?" Um, but yeah, so be prepared if you go into medicine. Everyone will ask you questions. Um, I think this will be my last question, and then I'll close with just a little something. But as far as why did I choose New Mexico? So in medicine, to get into residency, it's another competitive game. So like you get into medical school and you have that application to get into medical school, and now you have to apply for residency also. So basically, I I got to apply to schools and then they'd interview me and see am I the candidate, if they like my personality, if they if I fit their program basically. And then we have a match day. So basically, I pick 10 programs, and the programs pick their top candidates. and there's a computer algorithm that matches us somehow to match our choices with the program's choices. So it's a weird process, but I chose New Mexico because it was close to Colorado. Also, it's it reminds me a lot of home, and it kind of it gave me a feeling. They say you have a feeling of programs. Um, it's difficult to describe. It's like I fit here, I belong here, and that's something you want because working 80 hours a week is like it's someplace that you have to pick someplace that you want to be, and the people that you want to be around. And so um, there was just a feeling. I was like, I don't know. I can't explain this choice, but I'm picking New Mexico because I know I could be there and I know I like the people there. Um, but that being said, just to wrap up things, I would say closing wise, just for you guys, advice is, in life, opportunities will present themselves, and I wouldn't have gotten to where I've gotten without just trying things. They might be bizarre. Someone might say, "Hey, why don't you try this program?" Or, "Hey, why don't you tutor this? Or why don't you do this?" But I said yes. I tried it, um, and it kept leading me to where I am now. So, one of the things I would recommend is try programs, try opportunities that present themselves. You never know where that path will lead you. Um, Another thing I would say is, my personal belief is I have angels watching me, but that being said, is I think someone's always going to be watching you, whether you like it or not, whether you know them or not. Someone's always watching you. So either they're watching you to see how you succeed, how you're doing things, but someone's always watching you. I mean, like the assistant principal that said, "Hey, Aaron, why don't you try this program?" I mean, she barely knew me, but apparently she was watching me and she said, "Hey, why don't I try it?" And I tried it. Um, there's numerous other times where someone just offered me something because they noticed me out of the blue. So that goes to say that people are watching you, and hold yourself to a standard, and it'll show. But also, people believe in you in general, and they want to see you succeed. So they're watching you to see you succeed. So just know that people watch you, and they're generally rooting for you. Lastly, um, I think school seems really hard. Um, and getting into school seems hard. And as cliche as this sounds, um, really, my advice always is anything you want is attainable if you work hard. I mean, if you really want to get into med school, nothing's going to stop you. Um, I mean, I studied 12 hours a day while I was in medical school. When I was trying to study for the Mcat, I had to study 8 hours a day. Um, it's if you put into something, it's gonna come into fruition. Whatever the seed you sow, you water it enough, it'll grow and it'll become something. So as hard as long as this path I've kind of described to you guys is, um, it's attainable and it's doable. There's thousands of doctors out here. There's me. Anything you set your mind to, whether it is becoming a doctor or not, um, it's possible. And I think that's it. I can answer some last questions or however you guys want to do this.
So if you guys want to unmute your mic, if you have any last questions, and then after we get to the very end, I'm just going to ask you all to unmute and say thank you because he's giving us his time, and I truly value the fact that you're here.
I have a personal question. It's just basically I am a human development major, and I was thinking of minoring in either biological science or psychology, and I was just going to ask, what do you think you recommend for me if I want to apply to medical school in the future?
Like I said, I don't think it'll change things because no matter what, when you apply to medical school, you need prerequisites.
Gotcha.
So those are going to be biology classes, chemistry classes, anything that's going to prepare you to take an MCAT. So that doesn't change things. I think it becomes how much time do you have, and what do you want to put your time into.
Gotcha.
So if you want to if you want to do those biology classes, you're going to have to do it anyway. So you might as well have that minor. But also, if you love psychology and you generally love that, I advocate for that also because it becomes a topic of discussion of, hey, it's something you can always talk about, and it's something that makes you a more rounded individual.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Hello. What was your GPA when applying to med school?
So GPA, I never got to my GPAs. My GPA in med school, it was a 3.6. So generally they say like a 3.5 or higher makes you pretty competitive. It makes it easier to get in. But I had friends that had a 3.3. I'd say the higher your GPA, the easier it is in general, though.
Okay, thank you.
Any last questions? No, thank you, Dr. Jones. We love
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. You guys asked a lot of good questions. I wish you the best for you guys. If you guys ever have any questions, you can probably just email my aunt, and she could send the questions to me.
Just say, be careful, don't give out your info. They will.
Yeah, so feel free to email her, and she can forward the questions if anything pops in your mind. I'm always open for questions.
Very much. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks, guys. You guys have a good one.
Bye, guys.